Hello, and welcome back to our basic education class. It's really good to see you here again. Now, as you were informed at the end of the last class, today we are going to be discussing magic markers. And they really are magic. They serve various purposes in the human world, and we're going to talk about a few of those. And first, we're going to start with some flashcards. We're going to go over just some basic information about the magic marker. And here's an example of a magic marker right here. So we're going to discuss just a few basics before we get into all that. So I want you to pay attention. And here we have the definition of a marker. A marker is a pen which has its own ink source and a tip made of porous, pressed fibers such as felt. So when you open a magic marker, we have this thing here that's called a cap or a lid. You take it off. You're going to notice that there is a dark part here, and it is made of felt or some other porous material. And the ink is going to come out right there. And you can always put the cap back, and that will keep the ink from drying out. Now, you may run across some people who do not refer to these as magic markers or markers. So you'll need to familiarize yourself with some different terms for this item. They can also be known as a marker pen, a fine liner, marking pen, a felt tip marker, sketch pen, or other names. Depending on what part of the world you're in, different people will refer to them by different names. So if you hear something like marker pen or fine liner, marking pen, felt tip marker, sketch pen, just be aware that they are probably referring to something like this. And they can come in other colors. They're not all purple. Oh, that's another thing. The lid, the cap, usually will indicate the color of the marker itself. See, this one has a purple lid. So we know from that the ink inside this marker is purple. It's a handy little tip. When you're looking at what makes up a magic marker, if you want to know what it consists of, it's more than one item, as you may have already guessed. We have the felt tip, we have the ink, we have the housing and the lid. So there are different things that make up magic markers. It usually consists of a container, glass, aluminum, or plastic. Most of the ones are going to be plastic. And it has a core of an absorbent material. Like we already discussed, it can be felt or any other porous type of fiber material. And there are different types of markers. I have a few here that I can show you. Different types of markers. We have waterproof markers, which means that they can't be washed off. Typically, that means that even if they get wet or wiped with something, they're not going to come off. Dry erase markers, those are the ones that you can erase. Permanent markers and washable markers. Now, an example of a permanent marker would be what is known as a Sharpie marker. This is, you can see here in English, it is written Sharpie. It's written right there on the plastic container part of the pen. Now, this plastic housing contains the felt that runs down the length of the housing, and the felt holds onto the ink kind of like a wick. It's absorbent. And you can tell from this one that this is going to be a pink marker because the cap is pink. And if you also notice, this part is pink as well. And you can kind of tell from here that it's going to be pink. Like if I take this paper and I make a line, you can see what color that is. You can draw with magic markers. You can color with magic markers, just like this. See? Now I drew that. That's a heart shape. And then I just colored that in by going back and forth, applying the tip of the marker to the paper, like this. And we can create a solid color. Not just a line, you can make a solid color. It's very exciting. And you can do that with any magic marker. Now, Sharpie markers will literally tell you it's in very small print, but down here on the bottom it actually says permanent marker. So this is a permanent marker. That means if you use this on fabric or any surface, you're going to have a hard time getting it off there. Now, a washable marker will come out. Like if you get it on clothing, it will wash out. Washable markers are very popular with children, with parents who have school-age children, because sometimes accidentally or on purpose, they will draw on their clothing. But with the washable marker, it will wash out. Now let's talk about some more, a little bit more about the structure of the magic marker. Now remember we were talking about that tip part where the ink comes out? The upper part has a nib that was made in an earlier time of a hard felt material with a cap to keep it from drying out. Now, some of them are still made of felt. A lot of them now are made of synthetic products, synthetic stuff. This is a darker purple. So you can see here's more of a plum color. So you have the tip here. But this is actually a solid piece that will run down into the plastic housing of the marker. And it holds on to that ink. And as you use it, the ink will come down to the end of the tip here. And it will come out when you write on your paper. And it comes out nice and smooth and even. And it really is kind of like magic. The main reservoir, which holds the ink, is formed from polyester. The main reservoir of the marker is going to be in here, down inside this piece of the marker. The felt, in quotations, the felt used for the tip is usually made of compressed synthetic fibers or porous ceramics. So if you look at a contemporary marker, like here's a gray Sharpie marker, you can tell it's gray because of the cap. The cap is gray. This part is made of compressed synthetic fibers. See, it has a nice point to it. And the cool thing about the point is that you can make, it's very faint, but you can make a very fine line with it, or you can hold it kind of to the side like this and make a wider line if you want to. So you have a choice. You can make a wider line like that, or a finer line like that. It's totally up to you. You can use a combination depending on what you're coloring or writing or drawing. You can use any combination. I'll give you a little bit of history about magic markers. Until the 1990s, which was not that long ago, toluene and xylene were used as solvents. These substances are harmful and produce a strong smell. And I do remember when markers definitely smelled different. And there are some markers like this one. Look at how big this one is. This is the Sharpie Magnum. Now this one has a very distinct smell to it. And you can definitely see that the tip on this marker is very different. And the housing is different as well. It's actually metal. It is not plastic, it is metal. Now this might be known as a poster marker because it is so big. It's good for making large letters. Like if you were making a really big poster, a marker like this would come in handy. But you can see it's quite thick. This part is still plastic, and then this is made of the same porous material as the other markers. The Sharpie Magnum is also a permanent marker, and we know that because it says so right below Magnum. And it's metal. I don't know if it's stainless steel, but it kind of looks like it. And you can see it has a much larger cap. It's pretty big. And this is our last card. Today's markers are usually made on the basis of alcohols. So they don't typically use toluene and xylene anymore. The alcohol base is a little more friendly, I guess, as far as not damaging your health as much. So we have different types of markers here. Most of my markers are Sharpies. And some of them, you will notice, appear to be, these are slimmer. These are a little bit thicker. If you look at them, they're a little bit different. This one is a fine line marker, and this one makes a little bit wider. It's a little more bold. It's a little thicker line. Markers come in all different colors. I don't imagine there's a color that you can think of that you can't find in a marker. We even have metallic markers. Here is a metallic marker from Bic. Now Sharpie is a big brand for magic markers, but Bic, they also make pins. Bic makes markers as well, like this one. This is a metallic marker. Now it doesn't literally have metal. It's not literally metallic. It's only the color. And I'm going to show you how pretty this is. So I'm just coloring a little bit on here. This is a gold metallic marker. And I've just colored that block. And you might be able to see in the light that it has a bit of a metallic look about it. Remember we went over metals, metallic things? Kind of like that. It's not literally metal, it just looks like it. So it's nice to have a little bit of variety. This is labeled as a fine point permanent marker from Bic. We also have Sharpie Pins. Now these are a little harder to find. These are pins in the classic sense made by the company Sharpie. And this is a pink one, we know. Now you can see that is much smaller. That tip is much, much smaller than any of the others that we've looked at, especially compared to the poster marker. But it is an extremely fine line, and it makes a very, very fine line. It's definitely not as bold as some of the other markers we have. But I wanted to show you that just for your reference so that you would know that Sharpie also makes pins. Sometimes you'll find something like this. This is also a magic marker, but you'll notice something a little different about this one. Now the middle part is plastic, just like the others, but this marker has a cap on this end and this end. These markers have one cap that is a fine tip on one end and a broader tip on the other end. So with this marker, this gives you more choices as far as the really fine line and the broader, more bold line. And it uses the same material inside storing the ink. The porous material just runs throughout, and it's just open on both ends. I do find with these though that they seem to dry out faster. They don't last as long, just from my experience. And the ink doesn't seem to be as good a quality. We have a beautiful array of colors here. Look, I just grabbed these at random. We have a red one and a blue one, kind of an aqua green, and this is navy blue, although it's kind of hard to tell. It looks black, but it's dark blue. Magic markers are used all over the world, and as I mentioned earlier, depending on where you go, people will refer to them by different names. Not everyone's going to call them magic markers, so you just have to be aware of that fact. Of course, you know, when you go from one part of the world to the other, people have different terms for the same item, or there may be items that you can get in some parts of the world and not others. Like here we have orange, green, fuchsia, and plum. And again, these are all Sharpies. Sharpie seems to be a very popular brand. They do seem to last quite a long while. They're a little more expensive than some markers, but I think it's worth it. Now, if you were to go into a store, which is an establishment that sells items to the general public, if you go into a retail store and say you're looking for markers, you may not know where to go. Typically, you're going to go to what's referred to as either the stationery section of the store or office supplies, where you can get pens, paper, pencils, things like that. Usually in that section, or if they have a separate arts and crafts section with crayons, which we have not discussed yet, but they are multicolored drawing implements made of wax and coloring. You may find them in that section. But a lot of times when you buy magic markers, they're going to come in a box that's going to look something like this. A lot of times there will only be 8 markers in the box. Sometimes you can find larger boxes, but you can see here it's just a basic paper board box, a thin cardboard box with the name of the marker company on it, and it even says down here at the bottom, Magic Marker. So you will know when you read this that you have stumbled across magic markers. And you can tell the different colors by looking at them here in this cutout part of the box. You can see all the different colors that are going to come in this box of magic markers. So if you're looking for a particular color, you can very quickly glance at this and see the colors, and you will know if the color that you want is in there. Now, sometimes magic markers are used for activity sets. Magic markers are very popular with young people, children. You will see a lot of children coloring with them or drawing with them. For example, a little boy drew this. These are circus cannons, I'm told, and they were drawn on a piece of what's known as note paper. It has lines on it. It's from a memo pad and was cut out. So we see here that it has been drawn, like an outline was drawn, and then it was colored in yellow, blue, and red. These circus cannons. So, and this one was colored in with a silver metallic magic marker. But sometimes you will find activity sets that contain magic markers. Like here's the one from a popular children's movie known as Trolls. And you see here that it comes with this magic marker, and you can actually color in just this outline of a picture here. You are free to color that picture in yourself, which is a fun activity for young people. And it even says up here at the top, magic marker. And then we see the two of the characters from the movie right here, and we see all the vibrant color in this part. And we see clearly up here that it comes with at least one marker here, and then we have one there, and it shows what you can do. It just gives you the indication of coloring. So you can do what's known as coloring, where you add color with your magic markers. And it really encourages creativity because children can color it any color they wish. They can do it any way they want. Another fun activity for children with magic markers is coloring eggs. You may do this for a holiday known as Easter, when a lot of people decorate eggs and are known as Easter eggs. And here are some eggs that have been colored with magic markers, and we can even see them down here in the corner of the picture. It's really pretty. They have some beautiful colors in here. Nice, lovely colors on those Easter eggs. So that's another thing. As I was saying, there are a lot of uses for markers. Another way you might see them is like this. This is a picture of a box of dry erase markers. These are used a lot in the education field or when people are presenting information to a group. They may have what's known as a dry erase board, which is a large board. They're usually white. And they can use dry erase markers to draw on there, and then they simply can wipe it away. It just comes right off. And here is a box. Now this is made by Bic. As I mentioned earlier, Bic also made this gold metallic marker. This is a box of Bic, and that's their little symbol man up there. Magic markers, and these are dry erase markers. And dry erase markers can come in all colors. This is just a box of plain black ones here, but you can get dry erase markers in all sorts of colors. Now here are a couple of examples of what you can do with markers. If you like to color, you can use them with a lot of detail. If you have to take your time to do it, but you can produce a really pretty picture like this with your markers, or maybe something like this. And this is a picture that was just a black and white outline of a picture, and then different colors of markers were used to add all this pretty color. And we even have some here that's metallic. So it's a nice little composition. I like that picture. Now, unfortunately, sometimes people use markers in ways that were not really intended by the manufacturer. As you probably know, sometimes humans are mischievous, and they get into things, and they maybe do things that are a little out of the ordinary. You know, humans don't always do what you think they're going to do. So we have an example. We have several examples of, it's very unfortunate. We have some examples of humans using markers not in ways that they were intended. It's very sad. Here we have a picture of an unfortunate man who has consumed too much, more than likely too much of what is known as alcohol. We haven't gone over alcohol yet. This poor man has consumed too much alcohol, and it has caused him to go to sleep. And when people go to sleep after too much alcohol, sometimes it's hard to wake them up. Because of that, the other people around them are free to do things that might be considered embarrassing or inappropriate. I can't really explain the bag of marshmallows there by his head or the apparent votive candles on his eyes, and I don't really know what's going on with his mouth. But I think it's pretty safe to say that this is not what Sharpie or Bic had in mind when they produced their markers. It's just a good example of sometimes how humans will do things that you don't expect. They will take items and find new uses for them. Like this poor man here, it must have been around a holiday known as Christmas. You can see he has these red and green antlers, and they've taken a marker and painted his nose red. And I'm not really sure. I think they gave him like a single brow, so it's known as a monobrow. And I don't really know what that is, but Again, I would be willing to bet that alcohol was involved in this scenario. And this one, now there is something different about this picture. In this one, you can actually see the marker that was used, and you can assume that the person holding this marker is the one who is responsible for all the hieroglyphics on this man's face. He is what is known as passed out. That's where you consume too much alcohol and then go to sleep. And it's very creative. Again, I guess this is an example of markers bringing out a person's creativity. So I guess it has some benefits. But this picture is unique because you do see the marker in the picture. Usually you don't. Now, people using markers in ways that were not intended can be helpful for you. In cases like these, it could let you know that this is someone who sometimes, or at least once, consumed too much alcohol, and then they were drawn upon. But sometimes you have situations like this where you will see an individual actually coloring himself. And it's a very useful tool. It's a very useful visual because it lets you know right away that this is not someone you would want to date. This is not someone you would want to form a relationship with, because your better judgment would probably tell you that this is someone who, if you allowed them to be an integral part of your life, would probably seriously mess up your life. He looks like he would just come with a string of bad decisions and unfortunate outcomes. So it's useful to see someone like this because it lets you know right away that this is not a potential partner. This is not a potential life mate. This is someone you would want to get away from. So it is useful. We can thank markers for letting us know that, because sometimes it's hard to spot these people. But if you see this, it's a fairly clear indicator that you need to get away from them. So we have our markers. They are a very useful tool. People use them when they're making posters. You will see a lot of signs that people will make. If it's a handmade sign, chances are they've used one of these big poster markers like this, or a slightly smaller one. This is another Sharpie. You can see it kind of has an oval shape to it, and it's made of plastic. It has a cap on it, and it also has this neat little clip, so you could actually you could clip it on your shirt or your pants or whatever. I can't open it. This is actually a brand new one. Sometimes when you have a new one, the cap is hard to get off, and when you do get it off, it makes a loud sound. But it has a tip on it, a lot like the big fat one. But it can be known as a poster marker. Lots of school projects are done with markers. There are just hundreds of uses for them. So you will encounter these in your travels, I'm sure. As you go about the earth and interact with people, you will see markers from time to time. So I just wanted you to be aware of them, so you'd have a little bit of knowledge and experience with magic markers. So thank you so much for listening to me and learning a little bit about magic markers. I hope you have a great day.